the Dean of the School of Law at Liverpool Hope University. All right, Francesco, you've been watching this saga unfolding. Only a day ago, you heard people within Johnson's inner circle saying, oh, well, these resignations, at least the first few, are actually a good thing. Now he can consolidate a team around him. How quickly things have changed.
Good morning. Yes. Look, as your correspondent has been saying, the writing was on the wall yesterday, really. And once you have over 50 resignations, and the cabinet ministers who didn't resign, who haven't resigned, have not done so simply because the ship of state and its security must continue, the game was up. I think what is truly astonishing about this is that it exposes the weaknesses of our constitution. In other words, how you can actually get rid of a prime minister who no longer enjoys the confidence of those who legitimate his power. In other words, his own supporters in parliament. And I think that this is a wake-up call for us in this country, that we've relied on doing the decent thing, honor, integrity, and so on, to ensure that those who have power, when they lose it, go away. Boris Johnson has tested our constitutional system to the core. And I think that there will be significant lessons here on how we proceed. It's clear that last night he got a visit not only from cabinet ministers who were telling him he had to go, but he also got a visit from Sir Graham Brady, the chair of the 22 committee. And he was also told then that really the game was up. Why Boris didn't understand then that the game was up is beyond belief, frankly.
Well, perhaps when you've survived as many mini political earthquakes as he has, and things that it didn't look like he was going to survive, including the Partygate scandal. I mean, this incredible report came out from the government investigation, or it was an independent investigation, we could say, into what went on, that they were throwing these, at times, drunken parties while everybody else couldn't even see their sick relatives in the hospital during COVID. It didn't look like that was survivable, but it was. He survived the vote of no confidence, not by a lot, but he did. Ultimately, however, now we're seeing, what looks to be the final chapter. So you could also say that this does show some strengths of the system. He went by the rules. They had the no confidence vote, and that was all by the book. But then when he does lose support, you can't have somebody in that country just saying, I'm going to stay in power. You lose the support, they can find a way to change leadership.
I don't disagree with you that in a sense the system has a self-correcting mechanism almost, that in the end you can only push so far. But actually that's its weakness, that it doesn't rely on fundamental constitutional rules, it relies on convention and actually the political will. He survived this long because the majority in his party were prepared to tolerate rule breaking. Also, by the way, we must also remember that he prorogued Parliament, for example, using the royal prerogative. I don't want to get too technical, which clearly broke another convention, and it ended up in the Supreme Court. So there have been instance after instance after instance of pushing the constitutional limits and actually breaking them. So in a sense, what this demonstrates is both the strengths of the system. In the end, they got rid of him. He had to go because they couldn't lie for him anymore, to put it in a nutshell. Right? And really, if you look at the explanations that each of the 50 plus ministers who have now made statements have given, as well as those who are still in his cabinet but have asked him to resign, it's about decency, honesty, the rule of law, and integrity.
Yes.
And he pushed it so far that they couldn't take anymore.
Francesco, you raised such good points. You're so right that there are weaknesses visible here, but also a release valve, an escape hatch, and that this looks like it really is happening, that Johnson will be out. I mean, he is resigning of his own accord, but not really. 24 hours ago, he was vowing to stay. So when you talk about the integrity issue, and they didn't, you said a very key statement there, that they didn't want to lie for him anymore. Can it be said at this point definitively that in these multiple scandals that Johnson lied about his participation, but more so about his knowledge of the background surrounding these scandals?
Look, that's a very, very difficult question to answer. We can only go on the facts and the statements that have been made in Parliament, and we can only go on the basis of what his former health secretary said in Parliament yesterday, where it was obvious that the resigning minister and others were basically telling Parliament and the public that he was asking them to tell untruths, that they were being made to do things that they then discovered were not true, were not correct, were untruthful. So, if you like, that's the evidence. Remember, had he survived this, but though this may still happen, he is going to have to face an investigation by a parliamentary committee to see whether he misled Parliament. Look, I hate to put it in these sort of colloquial terms, but the evidence against him is just immense. But as I say, the reality is that he was able to get away with it as long as there were politicians in Parliament and in the Conservative Party who saw him as an electoral victor. The minute that disappeared, the minute that dissipated, he was finished. And in a sense, then they discovered all his vices. By the way, vices that they knew about when they elected him.
Yes, sir.
So, you can't have it both. Well, you try and have it both ways, just as he's done. But the reality is that we all knew his flaws. His party knew his flaws. And for as long as it was convenient, because he seemed to be a winner, it was fine. Once he becomes a loser, they want to get rid. The problem is that he didn't want to go. And frankly, he's turned this country into a bit of a laughingstock, in all honesty. That the mother of all parliaments, the mother of all democracies, it turns out that it's extremely difficult to get rid of a prime minister who doesn't want to go. Now, actually, constitutionally, Parliament, not only his own party could have got rid of him, but Parliament could, with the opposition leading on this, could have voted no confidence in him next week. So that's one constitutional means. But remember, even though in this country we don't want to bring the monarchy into the game, the fact is that the Queen, or the monarchy, she is the head of state, by the way, who appoints the Prime Minister and accepts their resignation, could also have stepped in constitutionally and actually asked him to resign because he no longer enjoys the confidence of the Parliament and certainly his party in Parliament. So there were means, but it is such a messy way of dealing with an issue. And in many ways, as I say, this episode, and he will go, he'll be gone today, though there will be a challenge because his former aide, Dominic Cummings, has been tweeting, get rid of him quickly because he will cause chaos between now and October. I think there's a lesson in this for this country, that relying on decent old chap rules, conventions, is all well and good as long as people respect them.
There you go.
But it's the exception that makes the rule.
And there's always going to be, there's always going to be somebody who comes along and says, I'm going to bend it. So, you do see that split there as well, that ultimately people had enough, but it took them a very, very long time of tolerance before they got to that point. Francesco, it is so good to talk to you on this. Hopefully we will speak again, and we're going to be watching this breaking news. Thanks, Francesco.